This video is a 2012 KLR 650 complete engine top and bottom rebuild. If you don't have a KLR 650, this video is probably going to be pretty boring to watch, but if you do, then this video could be a guide. I'm pretty thorough with my videography. Just know that every bike's a little bit different, so work on your own bike at your own risk. Okay, next I'm going to retake off this inner chain case cover. There's two of them. Remember, this upper bolt here is the short one with the blue marking on it. It's the only interior one, short, and it's got two dowel pins, one here and one there. Here it comes. Oh, it pulled the pulled that deal out. And it's this inner part. It's got a washer. That's a cam of some kind, because you can see it's not centered. Anyways, this big washer goes on there. And it looks like there's bearings in this, springs. We'll set that aside. Alright, next calling to remove the cam chain. And we'll remove these guards. I already had them off, but this is one of the guards and this is the other guard. And then we'll pull the chain. We'll keep these labeled and separated. That's the lower cam chain guide. Look at that. That thing's mutilated. That's, I guarantee you, we gotta get a new one of those. So I'll put it over here. It's a 12. This one appears to be in okay condition. It's got a washer on it. So looks like it comes out the bottom like that. It's got this washer that goes that way. It's got the bevel. That's weird. Am I looking? Okay, next I think we can remove this cam chain. So yeah, the easiest way would just be to come up out of there. I have to go through and inspect this to make sure it's not damaged, which I think it's fine. I don't think it came in any contact with this lower chain. So alright, I might as well pull this one now. This is the right. Alright, next it's these balancers. It's this balancer and this sprocket. These both have to come off, and so we can get the case split. And they have snap rings on both of them, so I'll get a snap ring plier, we'll pull those, and next we'll pop this one off. That's got a snap ring. It's got a washer on the outside. And a washer on the inside. Dual washers. They look like they're the same size, but don't quote me on that. Actually, the inside one looks like it's thicker. So the manual, it specifies the thicknesses of these in case you get them mixed up. You can use a caliper and measure them and find out which one's which. See, so mainly the reason why I'm tearing this case apart is because of the bearings and stuff like this. There is metal that was in here from that chain exploding, and I guarantee you there's pieces of metal inside these bearings. I shut the motor off pretty quick, but if I was to just fix the broken chain and not clean the bearings and inspect all the parts, the motor would fail. I plan on keeping this bike because I spent a lot of money building it up. I also feel bad about selling somebody a bike that just breaks down on them. Another thing you can see here on the crankshaft is a broken tooth, if you can see that or not. Alright, I'm back at it. We're going to tear down the rest of this thing and start on this right side of the crank. Alright, next take off this fan. Oh, I think it has to spin off. That's right. Alright, so that's as far as that gets. I think this spring thing comes out from the inside. So anyway, I'm going to pull the oil filter. These are both the same length. Anyone can rebuild these motors. You just have to be super meticulous. Standard. So the only one that's longer is this upper oil filter housing thing. That's the so rather than marring the case up with a pry bar, it's got these little tabs here so you can get something on it and kind of tap it. And 3 locations where you can do that. That should get it though. This is aluminum, so you don't want to pry on it too hard. Oh, there's the clutch cover. Wowee. Got this oil filter deal here, screen. So that's the inside looking at it. This has to go around that little ball just right so that it hooks on it like that. That way when you pull the clutch in, that turns and it pulls this out or in, I don't know, probably in or out, and it squeezes the clutch plates together. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's got to go around that little shoulder on that when you reinstall it. So I'm going to set this over there. The manual mentions this O-ring at filter housing, so let's get that off. Might have to order a new one. It looks pretty good, but set that aside. Alright, next we're going to take apart the clutch. It's 5 bolts. Do it in sequential order or whatever. Star pattern. You know the drill. Next, it says to remove the clutch lifter, which is this thing, so pull it straight out. Next, remove the clutch plate. Alright, so the next thing I gotta do is pull this nut off the clutch, and it requires a special tool from Kawasaki, and I don't want to buy a special tool from Kawasaki, so I basically built this thing, just a scrap piece of metal, and I drilled a hole and used one of the original bolts there to line it up and then mark that other hole. So I'm going to tighten 2 of these up, and then I should be able to get a wrench on this after this kind of holds it in place. Well, don't try that, because apparently those are made out of some cheap crap. Doesn't even look like metal. It's like super pot metal. Anyway, now I get to buy a new clutch. Alright, round 2. I built this wood thing, and I'm using the bolts, and I'm going to use the table to hold it. I broke the clutch basket trying to do it the other way, so I'm going to buy a new clutch to reinstall, but it is what it is. I still got to get it apart, and I don't have time to wait for 3 days for the thing to come in the mail. Man, that thing was on there. It broke loose, but I guarantee you that was more than 36 pounds. It was supposed to be 36 pounds from torque down. And here is the washer, so nut, washer, clutch basket, another washer. So we'll set those down here. This is the clutch basket, I mean. This comes off. Blue springs. So I'm going to need a new one of these. Alright, the next step is to remove the shift lever here. And it asks to make sure it's in neutral, which is the shallow detent or whatever. Make sure it's in that. So it is. I switched it there just a second ago. And then it says mark the splines, so you know how to install the shift lever back in the same spot, which I'm not quite sure on yet, so I have to open it up, I guess, to see what they mean by splines. It's like, what splines? Do you see any splines? The only splines I see are on these backside here. But I can't, you know, we're going to clean and paint all that, so marking those, I guess, would be foolish. But we'll go. So it pulls out. I see why it says that. It's so that, see, because these two are pointed at those two dots when it's in neutral, so we just got to remember that. That's why I videotape stuff. Next, it's asking to remove gear positioning lever. So it's this thing. Doesn't say how, but I think we have to take that Allen out. Yeah, that is red Loctite on it, believe it or not. There it is. Wow, bearings and everything. Oh, I see. So that torsion spring just hooks on this guy right here, and that's what gives it tension. Alright, next is the oil pump. These Phillips heads, but you got to hold this guy here while you do it. There's also dowels on the back side of this to be careful of, and there's a gasket that you got to remove. The dowels are there to mount it and make sure it doesn't move, so we'll do that next. Alright, 1¼ inch. Got a size 3 Phillips. So far, this bottom one and this next one are these standard size ones, but this highest one right there is shorter than the rest. Alright, this one was really trying to strip out. I had to use a torch, heat it up, and I believe that's because there's Loctite on these, red Loctite. So if you go to do it and you might just want to heat it up to begin with and not fight it. Now we'll pull this off like it says. Careful. I'm only seeing one dowel. Okay, that makes more sense. So that short one's to connect these two pieces here. I'm probably not going to need to take those off, but I got, yeah, two dowels on here. One seems to be longer than the other. Alright, so there's a lock washer on there. We got to flatten out first. Then the next thing, this deal is going to turn the crankshaft, right? So you have to go back, instead of buying a stupid special tool, you got to go back and put the rotor on so that you can use your Eagle mic rotor holder tool. Otherwise, Kawasaki recommends getting a jam gear which ties these two together or something, and it destroys it. It's like a sacrificial gear to buy that you buy from Kawasaki, and another special holder. So whatever, but this will work. I'm going to use an impact. Alright, so I got the rotor holder over here. We're going to blap it with a little bit of this here. Boom, there she goes. Oh, there is a keeper. It's just buried in those deals there. So pull these off. Holy smokes, this is going to be complicated. I might want to. So this is the primary gear, and this is the oil pump gear. And the order was this, that. So they should slide off. There's a keeper that locks the two of them together right there, so just keep that keeper. I'm assuming there's going to be a big washer behind it. Washer, that's a thick washer there, so that's the order of that. Flat washer and then another lock nut. Alright, so that's the water pump balancer on this side. In my case, since my balancer chain broke, it didn't hold it tight when I used the rotor holder, for I couldn't loosen it. So what I had to do, and it worked, I just took a flathead screwdriver and put it in there, and then used the impact, and it wedged it, and it didn't damage anything, so got lucky there. Plus, you got the balancer, of course. So there's the order on the outside of the balancer. Underneath the balancer, we got a fat spacer. And that's it. So inside's got a fat spacer, outside's got a washer and a nut. Alright, so I built this little wooden stand so I could split the cases. That way these don't touch. I tipped it over. This is the clutch shaft, and this fell off, and it has a large spacer and a kind of a race or something. I don't know. Alright, so made this wood frame. I made two templates. One template is for the inner case bolts, because there's some inner case bolts on these, not as many. And then the other template is for the outer case bolts. So I'm going to take them off of there and punch them through here. And that way I have a perfect, because they're all different lengths. And I'm just going to break them loose first. Alright, next we're going to do the outer case, just to kind of Alright, so there's my outer template. I took the oil pressure sensor out because I didn't know if that was going to hold it. But it appears this shaft, it's balancer shaft, water jacket, or water pump shaft can be pulled out. Alright, it's ready to be split. So I got all the bolts out. I got a rubber mallet and a putty knife. And I'm just going to try to tap it and gently get it to come apart. But it's really important not to gouge these aluminum cases because they're really malleable. And you got to be careful. It's not like steel where you can drive something between it and pry on it and it'd be alright. Case is split. Well, I suppose it would be wise to look at this with the camera. You could see some metal in the case, right? This case is mirrored, so this is flipped over. Crankshaft goes through that bearing. This is the shift fork, I believe. Shift fork and multiple shift forks. I'll have to look at how those go. Once you pull this thing apart, I pulled it apart upside down. I should have taken this off the top, but the shift fork fell down here. And this is the shift mechanism. It looks like there's a shaft that goes through that. When we put the two cases together, you could see this is the shifter. Like when you crank your shifter, opens those over. Not quite sure how it works yet. Assuming this one goes there too, but up here we got some sort of balancer with the snap ring. Here's the crankshaft. Got some bearings down there. Pull the crankshaft out. See, these are the damaged teeth on these sprockets, and I think they're pressed on there. So I'm going to take this to the machine shop along with the cylinder, probably the head, to see if they can, I don't know, I might test that myself, but I gotta have them bore scope that. And this has a couple of nicks on it, and I want to see if they can machine that. Since they're not in any contact with anything, I think that's okay. So maybe they could press on new gears if I can get them. So while I'm working on this, I'm gonna do a leak down test on this head. So I put the spark plug back in. I'm just gonna fill this up with diesel, let it sit for like 4 hours, and we'll see if it's leaking or not. So, this is not vitamin water, even though it's the same color. I guess I should label it now because don't want to accidentally drink that. Alright, I'm going to pull this, I believe it's like the balancer and water pump drive line out. Notice that. So this has got a shift fork here, and these are directional, so this would be the left shift fork and the right shift fork. In total there's 3 shift forks. There's another one down here, which I think that's 5th gear or 4th, 5th gear, not quite sure. This is the shift barrel, which is connected to the shift lever, and this is the output shaft and the input shaft. Crankshaft turns this, chains it does its gear mechanisms depending on where you shift it. And it spins this output shaft, goes back down here to your crankshaft sprocket, powers the bike. Transmissions are kind of tricky because you have to sort of build them in your hand and then slide them down in there together in order for them to fit. So, well, I was just cleaning this side of the case and I looked at this balancer and I realized, well, it's not moving. Well, look at this here. It's a piece of metal wedged itself in there, which that's why the chain broke. It's because of this piece of metal. It wedged in there and that thing stopped and it snapped the chain on the other side of the case. So, well, there's the piece. I don't know what that's from. Okay, I can't find where that piece came from, so I'm gonna take this transmission apart. On this lower shift fork, the lettering is facing up. Alright, I found the problem. I found where that piece came from. And it's this thing here. I think it's 4th gear. But you could see that it's broke right there. It's kind of hard to see, but it should have a tooth like right there and on the other side. Anyway, this is how it goes together. I think that's what shifts it into 3rd and 4th gear. So I'm going to pull this thing apart. Alright, so I got it coming out now. Just trying to keep them together. Basically just go right back in the same way. There's the broken forgot the name of it. So yeah, all of these bearings are good. It feels like that one's a little bit, but it's this one that's bad. It doesn't like to spin, so I got to replace that one at least. That one's smooth. I might just replace this one too. But anyway, I think everything else checks out. Alright, so I popped this bearing out. This is the only bad one that I found. I used a heat gun, just heated up the metal around it. But I did find this like tiny surface crack, and it's probably fine, but I'm just gonna clean it up real nice and put some JB Weld on it. Not much, just a tad bit, so it doesn't get worse. You can tell it's a surface crack because, well, you might not be able to see on the camera. It only goes to right there, and the actual metal, it doesn't go through the metal, so it's just this like shell. And I didn't want it to get any worse, so I'm gonna. Other than that, the case looks great, and I don't think it's anything to worry about. I think it's more of a fracture, like a stress fracture, than a crack. So I just want to take every precaution I can on this thing and do it the best I possibly can. But this bearing is for sure shot. When that balancer hit a piece of metal, it probably twisted it or bent it so it's out of balance. So it's real hard to spin.